Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How are you doing?
Very well, Brian. How are you doing yourself?
Oh, hanging in there, doing all right, surviving the holidays as is. I think I looked at the calendar, and today's podcast should be the first one of the new year. I believe it's going to be. I believe it's the first one of the new year. So
awesome.
I thought, why not take advantage of that and talk about what's going to be hitting everybody, sort of winterizing your body.
Great.
Talking a little bit about New Year's resolutions, talking about, what do you need to do to help preserve what you have, as we hit these winter months. As you said, what do you mean winter months? I know you're in California.
I'm in California. Winter's not such a thing here.
I get it. Although I was just talking to a friend of mine who lives in Sacramento, and he was saying that it did hit 30 degrees there the other day. So it does get a little chilly at times.
Yeah, at 4 a.m.
True.
And then by the time you're awake, it's like 42, or maybe it's 36. And then it'll be 60 or 58, and it'll be lovely.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. So, we don't have that luxury. I am actually looking at the weather forecast for this weekend, and it's like, we're either going to get 2 to 3 inches of rain or massive snow, probably on the rain side, just because it's been warm enough. And I'm like, oh, great. So cold rain, that's all we need. But again, East Coast, Washington, D.C., and you and I were talking about this the other day. It's like, look, good 2/3 of the country has to deal with weather, has to deal with the cold, has to deal with what's going to be coming and what's going to be changing. And maybe they're not going to be able to do as much outside. Maybe they're not going to be able to do as much of the activities that they wanted to do, whether it be tennis or pickleball or whatever, if they're playing at a public court, that okay, we need to change and think about doing things indoors, or we need to think about maybe not doing as much exercise or whatever. So I thought that would be a interesting, concept and talk for our first one of the year.
Seasonal change, right? Because things do change. Here in California, not so much, because we can run, we can bike pretty much all year.
Yep.
And you can do many outdoor activities anyway, most of the year. But out back there and in any of those northern climates, like you're in a completely different state now than you were in June.
Oh, yeah.
Your ability to do what you want to do, or to be outside or play basketball or whatever on an outside court, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, it's very different. It's a very different feel. And the people that you do see out there running when it's 40 degrees and they're in shorts and a t-shirt are just insane. They're wrong. They're different. They're a different breed of animal. I don't get it, but that's them. That's not me. That's them. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So that's going to be our topic for today. You are listening to Moving Conversation with Nora and Brian. Do us a favor. If you're liking the podcast, please subscribe so you get the latest episode dropped into your inbox every Tuesday morning as soon as it posts. And if you really enjoy the show, give it a 5-star rating. It helps our algorithms. I know nothing about what that means, but they say it helps the algorithm, so it'll get it out to more people. So we always want to, promote this as much as we can. Tell your friends, all about it and whatnot. Our emails, movingconvos@gmail.com, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is @movingconvos. So let's dive right in.
All right.
So when we're thinking about winterizing our body, first of all, with this time of year, if we're talking about it is New Year's, everybody wants to talk about New Year's resolution. The absolute worst time of the year to go into a gym is from the 3rd of January till about President's Day, because it is jam-packed with all the new people. every group exercise class, suddenly your favorite spot's taken and you're relegated to being in the back of the room because all these new people are there. And it eventually calms down and, hopefully people will stay, but we all know that is just not going to happen, that people are going to be, hit and miss with gyms and whatnot. And I'm not sure if it's like that in Pilates studios, but, you get your influx of newbies and then, people eventually peter out.
It depends in terms of Pilates studios. Some do see a January bump. Honestly, a lot of them don't. What I say is we actually see the post-January bump, at least in my studio. It was those who had suddenly decided to do CrossFit who hadn't moved in like 6 months that they would show up in our studios in March because they'd hurt themselves. Is really what happened a lot in our circumstance.
Yep.
So,
yes, exactly. That I can't tell you how many times we've gotten the Orange Theory Fitness or CrossFit or whatever, and they all start January 3rd. Yes, I'm joining. I'm going to do it this year. This is going to be my year. And they overdo it. Rotator cuff. Most of the men, it's rotator cuff.
Women too.
Women too. I see.
It's shoulders. Shoulders.
Lots and lots of shoulders, doing way too much upper body, way too much pressing activity, way before they're ready. They don't have a foundation to build upon, but they're going to do all of these hardcore exercises and just be here, throw them into the deep end and hope they can swim. And, we all know if you're over 40, there's no way your body is ready to do any of that stuff fresh out the gates, without building a foundation first.
Right. And for women especially, and I say this all the time because I've just seen it a million times, is a lot of fitness programs like CrossFit certainly, and I think Orange Theory from what I know of it, assume that a push-up that people are capable of a push-up, right? A full ordinary push-up. And 90% of the women I work with are not capable of a full push-up safely, at least not many of them, or not in a lot of, not a lot of repetition. And that's a real challenge in terms of the shoulders, I find. You got to really build up that shoulder strength before you participate in something like that.
Not only that, but when you look at other things with things like CrossFit, who are taking some activities that are traditionally big time strength, we're talking about powerlifting moves. We're talking about clean and jerk. We're talking about power cleans. We're talking about things that were designed for the Olympics, activities with heavy barbells and things like that, which I've worked with a number of athletes on that level before. And they're going to tell you that it's mostly neurologic. It's mostly building the proper pathways to do the exercise properly before you ever load the weight. Because you need to get that motor pattern stimulated first. You need to basically teach the body how to do it properly with no weight. Now you take an average woman especially who a 45-pound bar or a 35-pound bar is already heavy and ask them to try and do this may not be the wisest idea. And I've talked to a lot of strength coaches who have said, look, they shouldn't be doing those activities anyway. There's no real reason to be doing that should be for powerlifting. That should be for Olympic lifting. That there are other activities that can be done still for building strength that can be very beneficial, 100%, and can still be intense.
Yeah.
But doesn't have to have the same risk reward, factor.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's something just to keep in mind when you guys are thinking about this. So first things first, let's talk about New Year's resolutions, okay? First and foremost, in my mind, they need to be realistic and achievable.
And, yes, sustainable. So not just achievable, but sustainable too.
Yeah,
because
that's a good point.
As we know, if you're going to do anything in fitness, you can't do it for a week or for 2 weeks.
Right.
If you really want to make goals, you really want to make change, it's got to be a consistent commitment over time.
Yep, absolutely. And I mainly say realistic because if you're 200 pounds overweight, saying you want to be in a bikini by June probably isn't as realistic as you think it is. I'm sure that there are some people who have been able to do it. We've seen The Biggest Loser and all that kind of stuff have all these unrealistic goals and whatnot. But for me, it's sort of like, okay, what is realistic for the average person? Okay. When it comes to weight loss, they say the first goal should be about 10% of your body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, losing 20 pounds is going to be significant. It's going to be a significant amount off of your frame. So your body's going to feel better. You're going to look better. Your clothes are going to fit better. You're going to have a lot more success because success breeds success when you're at that point. So you're going to have some momentum. You're going to feel better about yourself. Instead of saying, I need to lose 60 pounds, start with a realistic goal. So I tell most of my clients, let's start with something that is like 10%, if that's what your goal is. And we can always exceed that, but have that be your first stepping stone. Have that be that first reach.
Walk before you run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. In that case, because so many clients have such unrealistic views of what's possible, whether they have been down this path before and succeeded or not, generally not, or whether they've not been down this path before of really trying to make physical change. It just takes persistence, and it takes commitment, and it takes time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm also a big believer in doing, forgive me for the term, but doing as little as possible to see as much gain as possible.
Efficiency. Yeah.
Efficiency. And also, I have worked at the National Center for Weight and Wellness as a consultant for a long time. So I've dealt with a lot of people who, come in and they've dedicated themselves now. They're going to do this. They're going to lose the weight. They're going to get in shape, and they want to work out 6 days a week for an hour and a half a day and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, cool your jets. Slow down. Because if I can get you to work out 3 days a week of cardio, let's say 30 minutes of cardio 3 days a week, and strength training 2 to 3 days a week, that's more than enough to start seeing change. Because if you set a goal too high and you are doing way too much, where do you go from there?
Well, oftentimes you fail,
right.
and then what I see is like you set your goals too high, and then you fail at them, and then you give up.
Right.
Right is one option, or you hurt yourself, or it's unsustainable.
Yep.
So it's very hard to go from like hard hitting 5 days a week. I'm going to really beat this thing, and maybe you can do that for a month. Maybe your job changes, maybe your life changes, and it's like suddenly you really can't do that anymore. So you're making those gains, and then suddenly you can't make those gains anymore because you're down to half an hour 4 times a week or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Realistic and sustainable.
Yep.
Long term. Think long term.
I also look at plateaus because I've dealt with this so often in my own journey that when you do plateau, you need to change something. We need to change one of the variables. So either you're going to have to increase days of the week, you're going to have to increase the number of minutes you're doing it, duration, frequency, intensity, or just whatever you're doing, the activity. You have to make a change. If you're doing 6 days a week of 90 minutes, where do you go from there?
Yeah. I'm going to take it up to 2 hours?
Exactly.
Only if I've got endless amounts of time.
Exactly. Yeah. So I usually tell people, let's find what is sustainable that I can do for a long period of time, meaning that is going to be achievable for, I usually tell people, think a lifetime. Okay. It doesn't have to necessarily be, I know that's a long time to think, but think, what could you do comfortably for the rest of your life? Is it a 20-minute walk every day? Is that doable? Well, sure. Sure it is. Okay, let's start there. Let's start small and work our way up. And that way, when we do hit a plateau, we can make those small adjustments. Okay, you're doing 20 minutes, we're going to take it up to 30. Or, you know what, let's change your route and have you do a few hills. Small changes that will take you off of that plateau without making it seem so extreme.
This is also looking, Brian, at that kind of specific January 1st resolution, this New Year's resolution of I want to lose weight, right? Which is a very typical motivation for that.
Yep.
And that certainly is a motivation, but you also have to look beyond that to how do I make that sustainable?
Yes.
And more importantly, in ways, how do I stay fit within that, right? How do I maintain my function, my movement abilities, my whatever I want to do with myself, comfortably within that, as things change, as things improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, this is sort of a reminder to the trainers out there and the Pilates instructors that when your clients do come to you with their New Year's resolution, we always want to encourage it. We always want to encourage them to make changes. And if they're dedicated, heck, a lot of times during the holidays, we sort of lose focus. So this is a great opportunity to reestablish that focus and get back on track a little bit. And now you say, okay, this is your resolution. Fantastic. So now when we're talking about, let's think about more winterizing. Okay, you can't go outside. You can't be walking as much, especially around here. I've had a number of clients tell me, well, I have to stop walking now. It's too cold. And these are older clients. And I was like, well, could you go to the mall? Could you go someplace that's indoors and walk? And usually they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I could do that. And just trying to give them another option to do what they're currently doing. If they're looking for an excuse. Now, people love to find excuses on how not to move. So I always say, okay, I'm going to be the eliminator of that. I will find other options for you, whether you like it or not. I'm going to suggest them. It's up to you to follow through.
Well, you're in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
I mean, Smithsonian's free. I'm sorry, but you can walk for days in
Right.
any of those areas.
Exactly.
You've got some real options there that are educational and also provide a number of steps.
Absolutely. When I was in upstate New York, I was at a point in my life when I was trying to not drastically lose weight, but it ended up being that in a short period of time. In one winter, I was able to lose a lot of weight. And one of the things I did every day, because I was in a town called Watertown, New York, which if anybody knows, it is a very small town. It is a couple hours north of Syracuse. It is basically Canada, and it is snowy like you wouldn't believe. And every day I would go to the gym, do my workout, and then I had nothing to do because I had a nighttime job as a DJ. So I would go to the mall and just walk around because I was bored. I got to tell you, that really helped. It kept me moving. It kept me moving. And just the act of going out, walking, makes a huge difference. It can make a huge difference in not only the number of calories you're burning and whatnot, but just feeling better because your body is moving through space. You know, we see a lot of silver sneakers doing that early in the morning going to the malls, which is great. And we should encourage that.
One of the things I find too in the winter for many people, even here in California, is that lack of circulation. Being cold generally makes aches and pains go up.
Yes.
It's that there's that sort of an old wives' tale, but it's also true. And increasing circulation, even if it's just, again, wall walking or whatever they're going to do, can really decrease that and make you more comfortable. Because what I find a lot of times in the winter with my clients is they get into that negative cycle. Like, it's cold, I'm not moving, I hurt more, therefore I'm going to stop moving. And that's not going in the right direction. Like, actually keep moving and things will be better. Circulation will be better. That helps to decrease inflammation. That helps to keep everything kind of moving on a better keel.
Well, working out in colder environments in general, I also remind people that you need to spend a little bit more time as well in the warm-up phase.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because your body is colder. Your joints are a little bit tighter. You know, your fascia is a little bit tighter. You're not moving as well as you were, you know, when it's 85 degrees outside or 90 degrees outside. So you need to spend a little bit more time beforehand. And I know there are some people who don't believe in warm-ups. You believe whatever you want. I happen to like them because they do get the body moving. So just an extra 10 minutes. Get the body moving a little bit more. Spend more time stretching, release work. Spend that time getting the body prepared for the workout you're about to do.
For my warm up, a lot of times I go two different ways in terms of just the warm up, because I think that's an interesting topic. One is I have to get my circulation going for me. I've got low blood pressure. I'm that person whose blood doesn't move well. And so I've got to get it moving. So for me, I have to start with something active, but very, very safe.
Yes.
Like, the elliptical or the treadmill or something like that, where I'm working at enough of a pace. My heart may or may not be getting particularly high, but I'm getting my blood going.
Yep.
And I always say that I warm up until I can feel that my hands are warm and that the blood is kind of in my hands. And then after that, then I will do some of my my stretching and that kind of thing to kind of get things loosened up that may be tightened up from being cold all day or whatever it is. Yep. And then I'll go into my workout. And that doesn't have to take more than about 10 or 15 minutes. But just that little process makes it so that when I hit my actual workout, I'm comfortable and I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I find that a lot of my clients come in and they want to shortchange their warm up because they feel as though that's wasting their time and their money because why should I be doing this? And I have to remind them, look, you haven't done anything all day. You need to get your body ready for what we're about to do to it. So I need it warm. I need the muscles to be at a certain temperature before we do any stretching, before we do any release work, or else we're really not getting much accomplished anyway. And in the winter, you really want to make sure you're doing it just because you are coming in from the cold. You're coming in when your body is at its sort of worst, especially me. I see people from, 6 a.m. on, when they literally have just woken up, crawled out of bed, gotten in their car, and come here. So their body is literally not moved yet.
Right.
So we need to get it moving. We need to get it moving. So that's something that I always remind people, allow a little extra time. They always ask me, how much time do you spend? I say, 15, 20 minutes sometimes. And they say, that long? I say, yeah. I don't watch the clock. I jump on the elliptical when I feel like, okay, that's good. Spend usually 7 to 10 minutes, hop off, go do some core work, go do some release work, go do some stretching, some movement, some mobility stuff. And my first few exercises involve a lot more motion. If I'm going to do lower body or something like that, where I want to, and I'll get out, a Viper or something like that, and I'll make sure that I'm going through some twisting. I'll make sure I'm going through different rotations through the hips, all sorts of stuff, just to make sure I've warmed everything up and everything's ready no matter what I throw at it that day.
Exactly. It also gets your neuromotor going too,
Yes.
right? So it gets your brain connected to your body and kind of where am I today? It's also a check-in time. Like everything feels great, good. I can push, or I got to pay attention to a shoulder, a knee, a back. Something's a little funky today.
Yep.
What do I need to pay attention to? So it just gives that opportunity to check in too. Because as you said, if somebody's been sitting at a desk all day or just woke up, there hasn't been that check-in time.
Yeah.
They've been thinking about something else, or they have not been moving. So
that's
good.
very good point, because it is a good opportunity for you to feel where your body is, because a lot of our clients are checked out. They don't live in their bodies.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
They don't.
So it is a good opportunity for that. If you're going to do anything, even indoors, but I say especially outdoors, layers. Make sure you're wearing layers when you're in the cold, because it's very easy to begin overheating, where you might want to, take off a layer or two, or if you suddenly get cold again, you can put a layer back on. I notice a lot of my clients, even in here, we try and keep it about between 65 to 68 degrees, which my staff cannot stand because we freeze, but the clients love it. But you can see as the workout progresses, they start taking off, a little bit more. They have the sweater on or the sweatshirt that comes off, or the hoodie that comes off, and eventually they're comfortable. And then as we're cooling down or whatnot, they start putting it back on. We got to stretch now. They start, layering back up, because it is going to be chilly and they are about to go back outside. So I always recommend, if you're going to be outside or inside, dress appropriately. Be sure to use layers. It's the easiest way, to heat up or, cool down,
Here in California, we still have, like, I'm a bike rider in the winter, and sometimes it's 42 degrees when I go out or whatever, and it's relatively chilly. And I've spent some active time getting my cold weather gear organized, and it's from very, very cold weather gear to just cold weather gear to cool gear to hot gear. I've got just this shirt's for this, and then I add that layer, and then I add that layer, and then I take that layer off, and that layer off. Like it's a little silly, and I don't have really a lot of bike clothes, to be honest with you, but I've just got one for sort of every phase of that temperature spectrum, and it's just super helpful, again, because then I can just take off my sweatshirt, or I can take off my gaiter if I've got something in my head that's really making me warm, and just adjust to things as the day gets warmer or the day gets colder.
Yeah, to me it just makes sense. The other thing in the cold that people forget about is hydration.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel thirsty when it's cold.
Yeah. And that's when you need it, because it's dry. You don't have the same amount of humidity in the air. And my thing is, I always notice if I start to feel my lips are dry, that usually is telling me, I'm not drinking enough.
You're dehydrating.
I'm dehydrated.
Exactly.
Got to start drinking even more. And I noticed yesterday I was drinking a ton. It just sort of reminded me, I was like, oh yeah, I need to pick this up. The temperature here has dropped significantly. You can really feel the air has gotten super dry. It almost feels like it's going to snow, and you can just feel the dryness. And it's like, oh, okay, it's time to turn it up a little bit and make sure you're getting enough hydration.
And for me, sometimes I have to change my hydration when it's cold because usually I'm just a water drinker. I'm a plain cool water drinker, not iced, but just cool water drinker. And sometimes in the winter, it's like, I don't want cold water.
Yeah.
So then I've got to, make up a cup of tea, or it doesn't have to be caffeinated, but make up a cup of something, or a cooler or a thermos full of something that I know will keep me motivated to hydrate throughout the day. And that's true, I think, anytime, but particularly in the winter, I've got to make myself be inspired to hydrate.
No, absolutely.
Because otherwise I'll just forget. Yeah.
And you're right. The cold water, for a lot of people, that is a turnoff when it's cold outside. It's like, I do not want that. But hot water doesn't sound good either. But you're right. Something flavored, something that can give you, whether it be an energy drink that gives you a little boost, or whether it be just something that has just a little bit of lemon in it, or something that, tastes good to you, that is just a little different, that doesn't have to be so cold or just pure water.
And what are the hydration? Because there's so many different hydration things. And honestly, I've tried to do some research on this, and it's like, I don't know. There are so many different opinions on what you should have in a hydration supplement. I'm honestly, I'm a little baffled. So my research has not been fruitful in that form. But sometimes that just adds flavor to my water, right? And gives me that motivation, like, oh, I want to drink that because it tastes like something instead of just more water.
Exactly.
And in the summer, no problem. But in the winter, I got to have a little extra boost.
That's a good idea. And it makes total sense. So when you're exercising in the colder environment, those are a couple of things just to think about, to help, you stay warmer, and want to exercise. The other thing that I try and do, and I'm going to challenge our listeners, and I'm going to challenge you with your clients, is try a new activity. During the winter, because let's just say pickleball's been super popular, and if you're playing outdoors, you play basketball, or you're doing an outdoor activity, even if it's cycling or running or whatever, and you can't do something outside. And we all know, let's just take running, for example. Running on a treadmill is different than running outside. They are different exercises. One's keeping up with a machine and one is propelling you through space. They're very different on your body. Why not try something that is going to be completely a different challenge for your body? And a lot of times I say, okay, if you've been focused so much on strength building, you go to the gym and all you do is weight lift. Okay, well, we can also work on flexibility or mobility type of exercises, which have greater ranges of motion. We can focus more on cardiovascular conditioning. We can focus more on recovery, putting an active recovery day or two in there. So there's other things you can focus on. It's kind of like, okay, let's focus on something that you're maybe a weakness of yours, or maybe something that, you haven't put much focus in. And let's put a little bit more focus on that and see if we can change that up a little bit and get the body to do something different. Maybe that's what you need.
One thing too to think about that is, periodization, right? It's like if somebody is a runner, for example, sometimes the winter when they can't run outside necessarily like they're used to, maybe a time to do things that are going to keep them in shape for running, but focus on other aspects of fitness that they may be neglecting.
Yeah.
Upper body strength or mobility or just strength, period. So it's also an opportunity to just change things up and give yourself a balance of what you're doing. If you're a cyclist, for example, winter and when you can't cycle, of course, you could always do indoor cycling, but you may want to think this is a good time to increase my hip flexibility, to work on upper body mobility and strength, to work on some of those postural issues that happen if you're a habitual cyclist, right? That's a time to kind of focus on something else and just give yourself a break from your usual activities, because the body likes variety. Yes, it likes consistency, but it also likes variety. And if you're always stressing the areas in the same way, like you're a long distance runner or whatever, a consistent runner, the body likes to have a break from that particular stress and likes other things to happen for a period of time. Then you can always go back to your running, your cycling, whatever else you ordinarily do during the warmer weather.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, we all get into a rut with our exercises because we get comfortable. Whether it is running, cycling, Pilates, strength training, whatever it is, we get into that rut because it's comfortable, it's fun, we're familiar with it, and we're good at it. You get to a point where you're good and it feels good to be good at something.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I find that this is a perfect time of year to reassess with our clients as well as with our own bodies and say, okay, let's do a real assessment. Let's do a check-in. Get out of our comfort zone a little bit. Where do I need to build, whether it be cardiovascular, mobility, whatever it is, and take a look and say, yeah, you know what? This right hip flexor of mine this past year has really tightened up on me, and I don't know why. I don't understand. So you know what? Maybe I need to focus in on that a little bit. Maybe I need to do a little bit more hip strengthening. You know, I'm going to focus on that for the next 6 or 8 weeks. Or I need to focus on, you know what? Cardio has not been my thing, darn it. Maybe I'm going to focus a little more on that and a little less on strength training. And maybe I'll do, you know, a little more intense strength training for 30 minutes instead of 60 minutes and do 20 minutes of the elliptical, as much as I hate, you know, something like that. Let's change it up a little bit and see if we can make a strength out of something that might be not a strength, something that might be, you know, a weakness at the moment.
Yeah, just improve your all of the many elements of fitness, right? Give yourself the opportunity to up level one of the ones that maybe you're not paying as much attention to, because it really is hard to do a completely integrated and fully balanced workout all the time for your whole life.
Yeah.
It just doesn't usually work that way.
Unless
we get in ruts and we get in things.
And also, who has the time?
That's what I mean. Exactly.
You know,
if I'm going to do strength training and cardio and mobility and this and that, like if that's all I'm doing and I'm a professional movie star and I can do 3 hours a day because they're being paid for it,
more power
great.
to you.
But for most of us, right, exactly. Enjoy. Good for you. It's not my situation.
Exactly. And yeah, so I also like to challenge my clients with think of something outside the box. Think of something that would be completely different, that maybe piqued your curiosity somewhere, somehow. And it's like, okay, like I've had some clients say, you know, I've always wanted to take up swimming, but they barely know how to swim. It's like, well, you know what? Let's challenge yourself. Let's figure this out. I'm looking into that right now because just in my own training, okay, I noticed, I think I told you, I think I talked about it on the podcast. I hurt my back, you know, a year and a half ago doing yoga. Realized yoga's not for me. Okay. And I realized that my training got very sagittally based. And I'm starting to get more three-dimensional. And I really reminded myself, okay, what can I do? And last week, we talked a lot about maintaining our strength as we age. And we started talking about Tai Chi and Qigong. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to get back into that. So I'm like, okay, now is an opportunity for me.
Great.
It's like, okay, now's an opportunity to find, you know, somewhere, you know, it's not like I'm going back to Kapiolani Park in Hawaii where I can go, you know, on Sunday morning and, you know, hang out, you know, in the bright sunshine. I know I can't do that. I'm not going to be outside, but there are classes and there are people who do this. And even if it's just, okay, teach me some of the basics so I can do like a sun salutation would be for yoga. If I could do my basic routine to get my body to move in ways that it may not be comfortable with, to move in ways that it hasn't moved maybe in a little while, you know, or with as much fluidity, because let's face it, even doing a side lunge, you do it different in fitness than you would with martial arts. The fluidity is going to be much different. And that's the sort of thing that's like, look, I want to train it in a different way. So that's something that I thought about this week when I was thinking about this topic. And I said, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to reach out and I'm going to see what I can do to try and do that at least once a week and see how it feels. And if it works, great. And at the same time, you and I talked about this before, be ready to fail. If it doesn't work, mark it off the list. That doesn't work. Try something else.
Me and a friend of mine were doing these trades years ago. She was a personal trainer, and I'm a massage therapist, acupuncturist, Pilates teacher. And so we trade back and forth every week. I'd give her a massage or whatever, and she would do something personal training with me. And we got into this thing of trying something new every week So we went bowling. We went to the driving range, and I'm the worst golfer in the world. We did miniature golf one time. We went to the pool and got pool noodles out. Um, and it was just such a good time. We went to a rock climbing gym. We went to like one of those places where you can pretend you're skydiving.
Oh yeah, Sky
Right,
Zone. Yeah,
yeah, Sky Zone. Went and did that, and honestly, it was a blast. We did a trapeze class,
nice.
because there was a circus arts court, program near us, and we just said, oh, let's go try trapeze for the day. And it was so much fun to just do something that I would never do, that I was an
Mm-hmm.
absolute beginner at or sucked at. And then some of them I did for a little longer. Like I would get into it for a bit, and I would get into that for a bit. And it was just so nice to have that new input into my mind and my body, try something new, try something different,
Yeah,
and get that stimulation.
nice,
It was
nice.
super fun. Yeah.
And you just named a whole bunch of things that I hadn't even thought of that people could take up. Rock climbing, for instance.
Yeah.
I worked with this teenager. Now he's in his 30s with children. But when he was a teenager, he suffered from some social anxiety issues and things like that. He was afraid of a lot of things, and heights was one of the things he was afraid of. And so I said, you know what? And I trained him on Saturday. I said, you and I are going to work out in the morning, and then we're going to go rock climbing. And this was when rock climbing gyms first opened. There was one that was, 45 minutes from us. And I said, we're going to do that every week. And we probably did it for 6 months. And
Wow.
it broke us both out of our shell because I had never done it before. But I came from Hawaii,
Yeah.
where climbing up a rock wall was something that we just did when we'd go hiking. So to me, it was not unfamiliar.
Yeah.
It was very different sport when you think about it from a sport point of view, completely different than what I was doing. I was just scrambling up the side of a face of a mountain. This was very different. But it got both of us out of our shell, and you train different muscles. You really,
Yes. Absolutely.
and it was like, oh, this is very different. And you named a bunch of different things. Take up golf. Which can be very challenging to the body and the brain and neurologically and, coordination wise and everything. But you know what? You can have fun with it. And you don't have to be good. You can suck.
Right, exactly. We also did archery. Actually, now that I think about it, trying to remember all the things we did. We did
Yeah.
archery. Went to like an archery range, and which was really like, oh my God, that was really hard on my inner thigh, inner wrist on the hand holding the bow.
Yep.
Because when you let that string go, it hits you unless you're holding it in a certain way.
Yep.
It didn't take long before I realized I was not holding it in the right way.
Oh,
So,
I took off
oh
skin
my
the very
God, it
first
was
time I
really,
tried that.
yes, absolutely, man. It hurt like heck. I had a bruise for like 3 weeks.
Fencing, something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Fencing. My wife said that was one of the most fun classes she took in college, was a fencing class.
Nice.
And if you think about, you're in a lunge position for a lot of it. You are moving, you are
Oh, yeah.
squatted, lunging, you are in motion. It's not,
Yeah,
it's it's not what you think it is. It's an activity. It's tough. It's challenging.
yeah, yeah. And it's one-sided, which is my only challenge with,
Yeah,
with
true.
fencing, because I did a little bit of that. It was because you're lunging on one side,
Yeah.
whatever that side is for you the whole time.
True.
Windsurfing.
Yeah.
I did some windsurfing, which again, not a winter sport at all. But it's the same thing. You're basically in a squat or
Yep.
a light squat for the whole time you're on that board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
we just threw a whole bunch of things out there to think about. But if there's something that's always interested you, it's like, why not give it a shot? The only thing that's, it's usually time, energy, could be money, granted, but those are the things that are usually stopping people. Now granted, if you're in Minnesota, okay, windsurfing may not be right now what you're going to do. Okay, that's fine.
No.
that might be a July thing for you, or a winter holiday thing. But yeah, think about something that might interest you, something that's a little, different, strange, but sounds like fun. Something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not doing it, only because I tried to get into that position and nearly killed myself, was curling.
Oh,
It looks like fun.
yeah.
And
Too much flexion for you.
it's a little bit too deep. I'm pretty flexible on my
Yeah.
hip flexor. I tried to get all the way down in that position. I was like, yeah, no, this 52-year-old body ain't getting down like that. I got close and I'm watching these people on TV and I'm thinking, wow, that looks like it would be incredible. But I think you got to start something
Oh,
like that a little earlier than 52. I'm just thinking,
apparently.
maybe, could be, could be.
That's great.
But there is a place here in DC in PG County that actually does curling. And I thought that might be interesting just to try it one day, just to go out and see, and know that
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk
Yeah.
for a week, probably straight in a straight line, but that's okay. It might be fun. So I'm going to challenge everybody to find something that's going to be different, new, a new adventure, not only for you, but also challenge your clients. And maybe, something that you could do with your clients. Something that you could make it out for social things. That's the other thing that I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about is the social aspect. A lot of people hibernate, in the
Yeah, they
winter.
get very isolated in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
really common.
yeah, and maybe they had a walking partner or whatnot in the summer, but they stop walking as much or whatever, so they don't get out or do that as much. So find something that might be a little social, that might get you to do something with other people or where there are other people around. That might be something to just, pique some interest. And maybe you'll learn something from other people. Like, oh, yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's try that.
Love it.
So,
Shake it up, people. Shake it up. Get creative,
yeah.
right? That seems to be what we're saying is get creative, change up your routine,
Yep.
find something new to do, explore something you haven't done, think about things that are maybe not your strength.
Yep.
And work with them over the winter. If there's an activity again that you're habituated to and love and do all the time, find some way to counterbalance that, to give yourself some cross training that really helps to balance out whatever that's doing for you.
Exactly.
And do something. And the other thing too, and you mentioned this a lot, is just do something. Keep moving.
Yes.
Because the other thing we talked about when we were talking about this topic was the challenge I always have, and I've been through this with so many clients. They're kind of don't do a lot over the winter. They essentially hibernate, or they do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then that first spring day comes and they go out for their 40-mile bike ride, or they go out for their 5-mile run, which they have not done in 5 months, and they hurt themselves.
Yep.
And then they're back, and then they've got to slow down and da-da-da. The other thing too is thinking about ramping up, being aware that spring will come and you may return to your activity, and just staying in shape for that and being committed to that. Because otherwise, man, that transition from inside to outside or winter to spring can really cause people a lot of people, classic time to get injured is that transition time.
Yeah. I don't know if you've, because of being in California, we get a lot of people who, starting in November, are like, okay, golf season's over, ski season's coming.
Yeah.
We got to prep for skiing. Well,
Yeah.
you also have to prep back up for your spring sports. You have to begin in February or March. Realize that you're going to have a beautiful day coming up soon, and you're going to want to get outside, and you're going to want to go for a 50-mile bike ride. You're going to want to go for a jog. You're going to want to go and play, pickleball or play basketball or whatever you want to do outside, or even if it's just hanging out with the family and, chasing the dog around. But if you go from nothing to that, you're right. That's when injuries can happen. We see a lot of Achilles tendon ruptures. People, go to do a jump shot or, running in softball or something like that and pop, or throwing the ball, trying to throw someone out in softball from the outfield, throw it all the way home, and they throw their rotator cuff out. So ramping back up is just as important as preparing for, it's sort of like your spring season needs to start a little bit sooner. Needs to start, in March.
Exactly.
Or February.
Late February, March, depending on where you are and when your seasons start, right?
Exactly.
What your weather's like. Some places like my friends in Canada, it's going to be, you can start in May because things aren't going to get beautiful till July. But and where you guys are, you guys can often get some pretty good spring in March.
Yeah.
And April for sure.
Yep.
You get some beautiful weather then.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So thinking about that, and then we're a little late for it, but winterizing. So getting prepared for your winter sports too. I always tried to start and suggest that to my clients in like September. Because if you're a skier or a snowboarder or something like that, the strength and endurance required in the legs is not inconsiderable.
No.
And if you've really not been doing anything that addresses that, I find you really got to do some work with a lot of my clients to get them prepared for that.
Yep.
Getting some squats and doing a lot of chair work in the Pilates studio,
Yep.
doing a lot of standing work, doing a lot of things where they're really just getting plain old strength going
Yep.
in their squats and stuff.
I find that, you know, we've talked about terminal knee extensions when we talked about the knee, but
Yeah.
walking backwards with resistance, focusing on that retro walking.
Nice.
I love for my skiers because what most people don't realize is when you're skiing, you're in a bent knee position for a long
Yep.
period of time. And
Yep.
because you're being pitched downhill, your weight's on your toes. So that's even more force on that knee. So you really
Yeah.
need to think about that and work that knee a lot. And you're
Yeah.
right. You need to
Exactly.
start 2 months out, not 2 weeks out, where a client will say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I just booked my
Yeah.
ski
Yeah. Yeah.
vacation in 2 weeks. Let's start working on it." It's like, "Oh, geez,
Yeah,
okay."
like well, you're not going to give people enough time unless they've been doing something
Right.
appropriate to it before then. But a lot of clients really haven't. They've not been
Yeah.
addressing that level of just basic, hip and leg strength
Yeah. Yeah.
up to that point.
And something that anybody who is thinking about going skiing, I'm going to make this recommendation. I do it to every one of my clients, and about half of them take me up on it. They spent a lot of money. They're going out west, from DC. They're going to go to Vail or Steamboat or one of these wonderful places. And I'm only going to be there for 6 days, so I'm going to ski all 6 days. Take one of the days off from skiing. Okay? Ski for like 3 or 4 days, then take a day off. Then you can ski a couple more days. That day in the middle to recover is huge.
It makes all the difference.
It's huge. And then you can finish strong rather than day 4, you're a little exhausted. Day 5, you can barely walk. Day 6, you're dead and you're not enjoying yourself anymore.
Yeah.
Take one of the days and maybe do a morning run and then take the rest of the day off and go do something else, go shopping, go hiking, go do something besides skiing. Take some recovery. Because then when you hit it the next day, you've built back and you're like, okay, I'm ready to do this. And your body is not going to be so exhausted.
Absolutely, because ski vacations. Again, I've got two different people who ski. I've got my ski addicts
Mm-hmm.
who live in Colorado or live in Tahoe and basically ski pretty much every weekend all winter, and that's one thing. And then I've got those like you, and I think about my brother and his family, and a lot of people I know who go out for an intensive week. Right, we're going to fly to Colorado, we're going to be there for a week, or we're going to go up to Tahoe and we're going to be there for a week. And maybe they do that 2 or 3 times during the season,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a lot of times what people who actually have to work and
Yeah.
don't have ski jobs have to do. And that's exactly right. The other thing too, I often suggest, unless you're already an expert skier, which you may be, is start your first day with a lesson. If you haven't skied for a year, or you haven't skied for like 8 or 9 months, and maybe you went once last winter because that's all you could do, start with a lesson. Just get back on your feet, get back on your skis, start the morning that way. I always suggest that to clients too, and then kind of get oriented, get organized,
Yep.
get yourself back together before you just hit the slopes cold after, oftentimes several months of not doing anything like that.
I have a client who's a demon skier. Demon skier. And he said he was a ski bum, during, some of his breaks during law school. And he said one of the best things he ever did. And this is a guy who, ego-wise, wouldn't let him take a lesson for years because he was on double black diamonds and all of this kind of stuff. And he was so good. But he said one year he just decided. He was watching the Olympics or something and said, those guys are so beautiful. Maybe there is something I can still learn. And he took a lesson. He said, I want an advanced lesson. And he did a little bit of research to find out who on this mountain to do. He said he learned more about his own way he skis. And now he said, I ski so much better.
Awesome.
So much less effort. And I feel like I'm carving into the mountain. I feel like I'm skiing beautifully, whereas before
Nice.
I was just skiing. And
Nice.
for him, that was huge. And he's in his 70s now, and he was in his mid 60s when he did this. And this is a guy who literally would, go heli skiing and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I learned more that time. And he said, every time I go out there, I make sure, even if it's only for a few hours, I can always learn something.
Nice.
And absolutely. And after that, I mentioned it to all of my clients, and especially the men who do have that ego. I'm like, look, so-and-so did it.
Love it.
And they all know that he's a demon skier. They said, oh, talk to him about it. He's going to tell you how much better he skis now. And again, less effort. He's older, and he says,
and it's getting easier. It's getting better.
Getting easier and better. So just some things to think about. So we covered winterizing your body. I do want to give everybody a little heads up since this is the start of a new year. We are now into this almost 6 months into our podcast, and we're having lots of fun. We're covering a lot of good topics and enjoying ourselves. I wanted to give you a heads up of what we're going to be covering the next couple of weeks, because we're going to be diving into a topic that we haven't avoided on purpose, but it's something that's a deep dive that we thought, you know what, let's wait until after the new year, and we're going to hit this pretty hard. And we're going to be talking about fascia. We're going to be probably doing a 3-part little series on this, on the different parts of it, talking about thoracolumbar fascia, how to train the fascia, what it is. Because I had a client actually send me a newspaper article from the not Washington Post, it was from the New York Times. And it said, oh, they're talking about this new thing that you've been talking about for years. It's called fascia. And I said, yeah, okay. People are just now, I guess, sort of discovering it in the general population. So I thought it'd be a fun thing for us to discuss. And you have done so much research on this and taught many, many classes, as have I. So I thought this would be a fun thing for us to dive into.
I love it. Yes, you guys should join us for this. It's a great topic. It really brings, I find it adds a fascinating layer to your training. Mm-hmm. It gives you a real understanding of how the body integrates movement. And for me, really breaks up that, or really doesn't break up, it really brings together that feeling of it's a bicep, it's a tricep. It's like, no, how does the whole body work as a unit in harmony? And that's what I love about all the fascia work, is it really helps to bring that into your mindset as a trainer.
Yeah. So I thought that would be a fun thing for us to do for January. So we're going to have at least a 2, probably a 3-part. So join us for that. Thanks so much for joining us on Moving Conversations. Hopefully today's conversation will spark a little bit of thought or idea on this topic or any of the topics we talked about, to sort of engage your brain for the week. And if you have a topic you want to drop us a line, do so at movingconvos@gmail.com. And, until next time, just keep on moving.